Everybody was saying 8. That's a lot.
Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a special Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, March 20th, 2019 at 5 p.m. Has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
Would you please call the roll?
Carlin?
Here.
Eliason? Evans?
Here.
Garner?
Here.
Herzog?
Here.
Olmsted?
Here.
Peschel?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. This is a type of a meeting which we hold about twice a year, I believe, between the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education and the Oshkosh Area, the Oshkosh City Council. And so we are happy to host the people from the city, including members of the council, as well as members of the city manager's team. So why don't we go around and introduce, just so everyone knows who's here. And we'll start over here with my colleague to the left.
I'm Kelly Olmsted, and I'm the Vice President of the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education.
I'm Allison Garner.
Stephanie Harlan.
Mark Roloff, City Manager.
John Fitzpatrick, Assistant City Manager.
Teresa Collins, Board Secretary.
Steve Herman, City Council.
Deb Alice Nasby, City Council.
Jake Krause, City Council.
Steve Cummings, Oshkosh Mayor.
Bob Peschel, school board member and treasurer of the school board.
And Jim Evans, School Board Member, and I'd just like to remind everybody that we are now officially in spring.
Hey.
That's right on the flower city.
That's must move outside.
Thanks for that reminder, Jim.
Very good.
And Councilmember Peschel.
Yes.
Beck will not be here. He's tied up at work, so.
And I believe
Apologies.
Deputy Mayor Palmieri is still at transit, so we had a couple meetings, so I'm sure she'll be here as soon as transit's over.
Great.
Vicki Cutright, Superintendent for Oshkosh Area School District.
And Barb Herzog, President of the Board of Education. There are 2 workshop items that we have on our agenda tonight, and we have approximately until 10 minutes of 6, because the board does have its regularly scheduled meeting tonight, which will begin at 6 p.m. We have 2 topics on our agenda tonight. One is mental health, and the other one is childhood poverty. Mental health, as we know, on a local level and statewide and national level, has been getting more and more attention, and for good reason. It's either a question of there are more issues out there with mental health, or they're getting more attention, or maybe a combination. But we certainly see the impact of mental health when it comes to our students and our community at large. So I'm not sure who wanted to weigh in first on this conversation, but the school district has taken the initiative in this area to help provide mental health professionals in our schools, because we see the impacts of either children who have mental health issues or family members. So anyone who would like to weigh in, maybe Dr. Cartwright, you'd like to talk about some of the initiatives the district has undertaken to address mental health issues within our schools.
Certainly. So we have a wonderful partnership with Catalba. They provide a lot of services. However, they are not located in all of our schools. This year, though, we did go with a model to where they go part-time in a few of our schools in order to provide services for students, as well as transfer some of the knowledge and train some of the staff at those schools so that they can work with those children when they're not there on site. Now, obviously, that staff cannot do the therapy sessions or any of those type of things, but instead works with them on how to work with the child appropriately while at the school setting. That's one area that we did. We also have a screener program that we utilize. Historically, it was in our high schools. We're backing that down to the 8th grade this year, and it's a screener that we utilize in order to help us determine who are some of those students who may have a higher need in order to receive mental health services, so that we can go ahead and identify those students and start providing those services there as well. We're looking for community partners. Right now, we're currently in discussion, and it's only at the discussion phase, but for example, with Aurora Hospital, to where they're coming in and possibly going to be looking at how to provide some direct services to students within our schools. We're looking at this at a larger range as well, because mental health is not isolated to children. It does impact everybody that works with those children. So this includes staff members as well. And so through our wellness program, we're having some of those conversations, taking a look at that, ensuring that we have the appropriate programs in place in order to support our employees as well who work with these children. For next year, we're also looking at ways in which, how can we further the conversation and how can we further providing direct services to students as well. So we're looking forward to that, and we'll be able to hopefully provide some additional information that in the near future, but we have to look through our budget at this point in time in order to locate resources in order to do that, and then of course the budget has to be approved by our school board. And then lastly, we're also looking right now with Governor Evers' budget that he has proposed. Within one segment of his budget proposal, he has mentioned, he has placed in there additional support for mental health. And so we're hopeful that that is something that the legislation will see as a benefit to schools districts, in particular, and how we can provide services directly to the students within the school system. Because they're here, they come to school pretty regularly, and or if they aren't, we want them to. And so we have to be able to provide the appropriate services in order to help facilitate those needs so that they can gain access to their curriculum on a daily basis, because that is an enormous barrier. If a child is coming to school and is just not even able to cope, how can we get just the curriculum and the academic achievement, and how can we hold them to that, and how can we help them be able to achieve at their fullest potential if we can't break through some of the cycle of mental health concerns that they bring to the table. So this is a very large concern for the school district, and is something that fortunately for an extended period of time now, we've progressively been adding on additional services and looking for different ways in which to fund these additional services. We've even this year, we received additional grant money that we applied for in order to provide services, and we are continuing and we are committed to our students in order to provide for this need.
Thank you, Dr. Cartwright. Mr. Roloff, Mr. Cummings, is there anything you wanted to address specifically related to mental health?
In terms of our police department, Chief Smith has recognized that mental health is extremely important for our officers and the toll it takes on them because of the nature of their work. And we've instituted a mental health and wellness committee for that very purpose, recognizing it just, and we've had some incidents where we're concerned about the welfare of our officers. We want to make sure that that they go home in as good a mental state as they can. And when they leave the service, whenever they choose to leave the service, that they leave mentally whole. And it's tough for a group of people who want to put on the toughest side. I'm looking over at Steve, the toughest side of a police officer, and to admit that vulnerability is a challenge for them. So we've got some programs that we're working on. Chief Smith can't be here tonight. I'm curious, with the programs you're having, a lot of what we would help you with would be more of the urgent issues. Right. Are you satisfied with our response? Is there anything that we can help you more on? Because I know that's sometimes all we can do is the urgent here and now issue.
Well, we've been very fortunate working with the Oshkosh Police Department and our partnership that we have with the police department. Through our EPCOT program, they attend on a regular basis. We train together and we talk together. And I think that's one very critical element. So that way when we have concerns, we're able to address that as quickly as possible, number one. Number two, they also are, as our staff members are becoming trained on mental health and doing school safety analyses and these type of things, the Oshkosh Police Department is there side by side with us for that, and which is very nice for our school resource officers specifically. So I want to specify that. So that has been a very natural and very strong partnership, and we're very appreciative of the support and the collaboration. Even Chief Dean and myself, we talk on a monthly basis, and we talk about some of those hot spot issues, as you might say, as well as, hey, what's working well and what can we do in order to collaborate stronger. So I would say yes, that partnership is working very well.
To the city manager's point, I just want to, and I've been retired 9 years out of law enforcement, so let me just get that out of there. But mental health has always been a law enforcement concern, not only for the officers, but for training to identify people in mental health crisis. And some of us that have been on council for a long time, I think school board even, remember several years ago, they did Children in Crisis and Mental Health.
Kids in Crisis.
It was sponsored by the county health department, and that. And I think that's something that's missing here. County Human Services is responsible for mental health in Winnebago County. That's their job.
Well, they're
A
full.
good part of it.
Yeah.
Not for the school district per se, but I mean for law enforcement as
Right.
a backdrop.
Right.
You know, if kids have to be placed out of the home due to a mental health crisis, Child Protective Services gets engaged, that's a county. They get funded for that stuff. And I think some of these issues, sometimes, it's like it's the city's responsibility or the school board's responsibility, when it's really Winnebago County.
Right.
Because that's their role as a human services. I know the Oshkosh Housing Authority, Winnebago County Housing Authority has people trained in identifying mental health crises to their clients. Day by Day Warming Shelter has people trained when those people come in to do mental health services. So I think there's opportunities. I think what the best we can do as a city / help you, help everybody, is to identify the resources. What's out there and where the help is available for those families, for those kids. Because when they're in crisis, it's now. It's not, well, it's starting to come on, but no, a lot of times it's a failed grade in school that could trigger it. It could be a discipline at home or looking forward to doing something and they can't do it for one reason or another. So when they're in crisis, they're in crisis. So it's finding those resources and making sure everybody knows where those resources are. And I know that law enforcement has been training more and more and more, identifying those situations, because when they get ignored, that's when we get some of those more higher instances. I mean, just take recently the unfortunate double homicide, suicide homicide, and then the infant. He was in mental health care previously to being let go, but it wasn't tracked well enough that allowed him to still purchase a weapon. So I think sometimes we get caught up in thinking that it's always our responsibility when it really needs to be, because a lot of times task force gets set up when there's already a task force, whereas another task force gets set up for something when we should be partnering. The United Way works a lot in the mental health area. I don't know now, but when Supine was the director, they did a lot of kind of bringing groups and organizations together to talk about those mental health issues.
One of the things I want to bring up is that all of the resources that we have with the county and the city and even the surrounding areas, they're full.
Yeah, I know they're full.
And so there aren't enough resources.
Well, that's true, there aren't. And I know the county's building a 16-bed unit.
Yes.
It's going to be building a
Yes.
16-bed. I think it's volunteer, maybe some inpatient requirements out at Parkview Health Center, but it's going to be a good year and a half before that's ready to go.
And that's not even going to.
No, that's not even done.
Right.
No.
So I think as we're all facing the same types of challenges, how can all of us, city, county, school board, neighbors, whatever, how do we, because we're all pulling from the same types of resources, how can we do a better job of maybe sharing those resources? What does the county have that we're not accessing that maybe we can?
Sure. I think it's almost like a toolbox. What are the toolboxes? What, as we identify them, as we see them, I get, it's like we're the information people because we're the public elected officials, and we should have that information.
Yeah.
Do we all have it? Probably not. You're right.
Yeah.
And they're taxed to the max.
The one question I have is how do you reach out to the family members and also the parents? I think if there's this issue in the home, it's going to affect the entire family. And I've said this before, it starts with the parents somehow. And how are you reaching out to the parents? Having a child, anyone can do it. It's an 18-plus year commitment. And are people really equipped in the best of circumstances to handle these situations? So it's kind of a family and the parents.
So oftentimes, whenever we're identifying students who have mental health needs, we try to do, dependent upon the level and the severity of the need and the urgency of the need, drives how we respond to that. So ultimately, ideally, what we would like to do is to be able to provide what we call wraparound services. That's where you're providing services not only during the school, but also after school hours. Because the school, to Councilman Herman's point, unfortunately, we're able to provide services, but only to a certain extent.
Right.
Hence why we do, a lot of times, we'll do referrals out for students to have a little bit more of that in-depth type of therapy that they may need. And that's very important for us because now we are active, well, we always engage the parents or the guardians. So I want to make that very clear, as we're always notifying, we're always engaging. But, as to how we say, here are these resources, and again, dependent upon the need, that's what we're going to try to drive them to go to in order to provide the appropriate type of resources for them.
I think the other thing that we should probably recognize is that the rate of depression and anxiety in adolescents in America is skyrocketing. So we are in a unique position, and it's not about parents, it's not about demographics, it's not about education levels. It is now epidemic levels of anxiety and depression, and we're not sure why, and nobody has a reason. There's lots of theories. So as a school district where our entire base of, clientele are adolescents and younger, we're swamped. And they're kids from really great homes, there's kids from not such great homes, and there's kids all in between. So we have a new problem that we've not faced before. So we're drowning right now.
Deb has been trying to jump in here.
No, just an observation. I would assume probably the toughest part for the school district staff is probably identifying those that might be silently suffering. So it's great to hear that you have tools and, in order to implement with staff and others to look out for that. But I was just kind of curious because, there is an organization, and I don't know if the school district has had any interaction with them at all, but Rise Together, which is run by Anthony Alvarado, seems to be doing a lot of work with youth and has been very impactful. It looks like with a number of schools within the state and actually all around the nation. And, I think there's it helps, I think, bring awareness. Does it fix the issue? No, but I think a lot of it is awareness. I think a lot of it is, again, training. I think it's tools. I think it's also, is it adult peer groups to mentor youth? Is it youth peer groups? I'm not really sure, but my impression is that organization may come with some significant tools to add to a community that definitely is having this as an issue within their student population.
If it's okay, I would like to invite actually my Director of People Services, only because he could really add to this conversation if it's appropriate with everybody. Because I do, to your question, yes, we already have something like that in place. But Mr. Cameron can definitely address a lot more of that information for you.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've looked into Rise Together. I've had some conversations with Anthony, and their organization is doing a lot of great things. But at the time we looked into them, it didn't really fit in with the framework that we were putting together. They focus more on presentations, educating students, and our Rise Up framework, which is our mental health framework, really focuses in on education, identification, and direct services. And right now, the big way we identify students is through the wellness screen. And as Dr. Cartwright said, that's been primarily at the high school level. We're trying to move that down into the middle school as well. At the elementary school, we're also looking at beefing up our social emotional learning curriculum. And as a part of that, we're exploring screening tools for social emotional learning. So it doesn't factor in on some of those traditional mental health conditions like anxiety and depression like our wellness screen does, but it looks at some of those precursors that younger children would probably be demonstrating.
Just a question, are you seeing it at the very pre-K already? Seeing some mental health issues?
Yes.
Yeah.
Stressors?
And in younger children like that, it manifests itself differently than it would in
Right.
older children.
Sure.
But yeah, even in 4K, we're starting to see the initial signs of some mental health struggles. You know, and one of the difficult things is we're seeing more and more children coming into the district having trauma in their background. And a lot of times it's really difficult to really parse out the root cause of some of the behaviors that we're seeing. Is it a true mental health disorder? Is it a child who's experienced trauma in their past and is now acting out in unique ways, or is it a combination of the two?
One question, Matt. What does the high divorce rate in this country have to do with it, and also alcohol and drugs in the home?
Two good questions. You know, and that goes back to trauma. You know, there's been a big study that's been done, the ACEs study. It's pretty well known. It's been going on 10 years now since that initial study was done. And really what that study showed is it looked at 10 risk factors, divorce being one of them, substance use in the home being one of them. And the idea is the more of those 10 risk factors an individual experiences in their life, the more likely they are to experience some sort of mental health condition or adverse effect from those stressors later on in life. So, you know, the difficult thing is something that could be traumatic for one student isn't necessarily traumatic for another. So in generality, we could say, yeah, divorce definitely has an impact on the mental health of our students, but it could impact our students so differently from one to the next.
I want to get back to Deb's comment on the silent sufferers. I've often wondered when there have been conversations about mental health, about in terms of children in the schools, is it the child who has a mental health issue, or are there family members and/or family members? Maybe the child is quote-unquote normal, but the parent is not, or older siblings manifest symptoms of mental health. So how does that impact children? I don't have answers to that, but those are some things that I wonder about in the broader discussion of mental health.
And they may not be in an environment at home that allows them to talk about their issues either. Having done some jail outreach and talking with those, to the point of trauma, going back, it's amazing. And, you know, sometimes they weren't allowed to talk about things, that it just needed to kind of go under the carpet, which then only when you internalize, and you have to keep internalizing it, and there may be some other exterior things going on, it just adds to the trauma, and just, you know, until all of a sudden they just, you know, snap. And so, you know, that's kind of, you know, what I wonder, and that's got to be, again, very difficult for your staff to know, you know, when sometimes the signs are very evident, and other times you may have somebody who's internalizing the mental health issue, or, like, to your point, Barb, you know, they're okay, but may have other issues within the home, but yet they, unfortunately, nobody knows.
And I believe Matt may have some information that he could share with you on that.
Great.
Yeah, one thing that we're trying to do as a district is really reduce the stigma around mental health. We actually just had a speaker this past week, a gentleman by the name of Mike Vinny came and spoke with our 8th grade students about stigma, mental health, and how the stigma surrounding mental health regularly leads to individuals not seeking the help and support that they need. So as a school district, that's one of the huge things we want to do is remove that barrier, so students can access the services and supports they need. And a big part of that is helping parents understand that you know, mental health isn't a taboo. You know, that it's okay to seek services and support. Mental health is not synonymous with weakness. You know, it's just like physical health conditions. If you break your leg or break your arm, you're going to go seek the treatment and support you need, and we need to think of mental health the same way. If you have a mental health condition, there's nothing wrong with, you know, going to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist.
Aside from the demand response that we provide, you know, I'm trying to think of, gosh, what can we do to help? Like, you know, what can we bring to the table? And the only thing I can think of, because as Councilmember Herman pointed out, the county does a lot of those, but we can, we do have communication tools. Are there opportunities for us to help with increasing awareness, to get rid of that stigma? Because when I talked about the police officers, it's exactly the same thing. It's not just, it's that carrying that stigma and, the shame of having mental health. It's like, well, the shame of, having a cold. I mean, it's so easy to talk about a cold, but we can't talk about mental illness. Is there something we can do in terms of assisting in that effort? Because that's something with Oshkosh Media we could certainly bring to the table. I don't know, I throw that out because I certainly want to, I think the council wants to do something, but it's like, but what exactly can we do? You have
Well, I think there's
you have a
several
heck of
things.
an issue.
Obviously, making sure that our police department has all the training and tools that are available. Our fire department, they end up at some of these homes and as ambulance calls, and they're actually crisis calls, but they start that way, and then they call in the police probably. But I think Mr. Rolo's right. Maybe we start to use the Oshkosh Media a little more in identifying resources, have a topic on it. Somebody from the school district comes in and talks a little bit about it, or maybe it's more of an education program even for your employees, your teachers, your counselors, your whatever. And talk about what's available in the community and use Oshkosh Media as a tool. The radio station also, they simulcast, I believe, once in a while. And so I think getting information out is one of the best things we as a city can do to assist the school district, because it sounds like you guys are really doing a lot of good work and have a lot of good tools in place. It's just a matter of, again, educating that community. So many times, and I'm sure a lot of school board members gets phone calls when it really doesn't pertain to what their job is, but you're the resource. You're the person that they call because they don't know who else to call, and they figure you'll get the answer if you don't have it. And so I think being an information and resource is one of the best tools we as a city council can do to help the school district.
And along that same line, I've looked up the ACE test you mentioned, and that's basically for people 18 and younger. Is there a test like that for people 18 and over?
I don't know if the study has been expanded. I mean, the idea behind it is experiencing adverse things as a child has lasting effects into adulthood.
I suppose it would carry over regardless.
Yeah.
But if we could put this out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as a district, we do a number of things to try to educate not only parents but the community. We offer youth mental health first aid 3 to 4 times a year, and that's open to anybody in the community who's interested. We also offer Love and Logic a couple times a year, and that's great for parents. And we try to make it known when these trainings are coming up. But if the city could assist in pushing that out.
Absolutely.
And also just awareness for programs not within the district, but for example, the 211, when parents need additional resources or community members, or maybe it's a neighbor noticing something, a family needs some additional help or something to that effect, just making the call to the 211 number to say, hey, I noticed so-and-so and so-and-so, and how can I help them? And so those type of resources that I think we have a very good opportunity to push that type of information out collaboratively, so that we can ensure that all families, adults and children, get those supports and services that are necessary for them to be successful. But that's just one example. And what we would definitely welcome the opportunities that when we're having these type of workshops that are happening and such, if we can provide that to you, for you to push that information out to the community as a whole.
Absolutely.
We would greatly appreciate that. While we have a lot of people that pay attention to what's happening within the district, this is a much larger issue than the district.
It's a community issue. I mean, that's why
Right.
we want to talk about it.
And you've heard me say before, I'm very accustomed to working within the area of mental health, especially from where I came from, and since that had been in one of my prior responsibilities. And I served on mental health children's commissions and such as that for our county mayor down in Florida. Proportionately wise speaking, and I want to make sure I make that very clear, proportionately wise speaking, not number. The need that I am seeing and witnessing here within the Oshkosh community proportionately is much greater than what I even saw in Orange County, Florida, Orlando. So that's alarming. I don't know why. I want to emphasize something that Ms. Gardner had previously stated, which is that this is not an economic, you cannot identify this based off economic status, okay? It goes across the board. It goes across all ethnicities, all races, all socioeconomic levels. This is something that's much greater. The root cause, I don't know. And candidly speaking, I don't think there is a silver bullet on this. I think there's several root causes to this, and it is going to be situational to that. And a lot of it, unfortunately, is triggered through traumatic events. We know that. And a lot of times it's not with a child. It could be a secondary traumatic event. In other words, they may not have actually been personally involved with it, but they know about it, which causes this need to occur as well. And as I mentioned before, for the district, for us, we're really working hard on this, and we know we need to do a lot more, and we're still doing that because our core business, obviously, is to ensure that all children are successful, right? Academically, socially, emotionally, the whole child. And most people think public education, oh no, you're just about teaching, you're just about academics, but we're not, we're so much more than that.
I wish it was that simple.
Yeah, exactly. And if we don't address those social emotional needs, then we can't get to those academic needs to the level for which we need them to be at to be successful in a global economy. So this is an issue that unfortunately I don't see coming to a conclusion anytime in the future, but we're greatly appreciative of any collaboration in order to ensure we're getting the right resources to the community as a whole so that our children can be successful.
Well, perhaps Dr. Cartwright and I can brainstorm on some ideas, because I think it's, we all care about it, but we know it's, no one of us can solve this issue, and it's going to take more than everybody here at this table. John, did you want to say something?
I think, a lot of great points. I think, just to piggyback on some of the things that Mark said, Councilmember Herman, and also the comment about stigma. I think, it's one thing to recognize these social programs or social issues. It's another thing to try to effectuate any change. And I think, one resource that I think is an important one that we need to be cognizant of is just our staff. And because they're in such close proximity or have the opportunity to have interaction with the citizenry on a daily basis, your staff and ours, I think it's really important. I think Councilmember Herman made a great point earlier, and the comment earlier about stigma. Removing the stigma, educating them, because if they're not prepared to help and or recognize concerns when they're interacting with the citizenry, then, that's an opportunity that we've missed to try to provide assistance. So I think, we've been fortunate. We've partnered a little bit with some people in the community that have supported us in some of our efforts to help provide resources to our staff, physically and emotionally, psychologically. I know we're all working together through Three Waves Clinic on some coaching initiatives that we've just brought forward recently, and I think that's been very well received by our employees. So I think if we can utilize our staff to try to impact this problem, I think we might be surprised about what we might be able to accomplish. But it's something that we have to be mindful, I think, and on a regular basis, certainly.
Anyone else?
The only comments, but we've all used the word community, and Mr. Councilmember Herman, you talked about the county, what the county does do, but we're Oshkosh. We're the city council of Oshkosh. You're basically Oshkosh. I know you go a little bit out. But I think we have to work together on this issue, and yes, there's the county here, but what can we collectively do to address the issue in the city of Oshkosh? And I don't think we can totally rely on the county. I mean, it's, the county covers a whole lot of turf, and I don't think people think a lot about what the county is doing. They're thinking about what can the city do, what could the school district do. The county is maybe a little off here in the mindset. So I think it's really a partnership between our two organizations and whoever else. But
Mr. Evans or Mr. Peschel, I'm not sure whose hand I was seeing there.
So, a little bit in agreement, Mayor Cummings. I think it's important for our bodies to know that a lot of the stuff that the services are being provided to the students and being provided to the families are based in the county services. I think, Matt, I think you would probably agree that you probably converse with the county a lot in relation to the supports and services and the issues that arise in the school district related to the children that we serve, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
So they're not, so it's not like they're not part of the discussion or part of the solution. They're just not here. Someone's not here today to represent that side of what they're doing. So, and I agree, they're looking at the full county, but they have services based right here in Oshkosh to serve Oshkosh families. And so I think that's a very accurate statement. I think what's important is that, maybe we also need to understand what types of supports and services that they're providing, not only to students, but also to the families and the citizens of Oshkosh that live within Winnebago County. I think it's a lot greater than what we really know and understand, because the Department of Human Services provides a vast amount of services and supports to Oshkosh residents. And so I just don't want it to go unsaid, the amount of level and support that they provide, because they do provide a great deal, a lot more than what we understand. And it's true, there's not enough support and services in our community for that. But I would say that in every aspect, we're already working with the county on some of that stuff. I think in the point, if we want to continue this conversation, because I think the next conversation kind of hits on that as well, we want to make sure that we bring the proper representative from the county department or the county area to kind of be part of that discussion. Because I think we're in a spot where we have the ability to work together to create some type of comprehensive and some type of community-oriented plan to start addressing this. But it's not just us, it's not just the county, it's the Boys and Girls Club, it's all, Community for Hope, it's all these other nonprofit organizations that do all this stuff outside of us, in our community. And then it really takes a village, right? I think that's kind of where we're going with this, is that it takes a village to work together to create supportive services that can help things be a lot better than what they are in our community. Because unfortunately, there is not a solution. There's not a cure for depression. There's not a cure for anxiety. These are types of mental health issues that our kids and our families need to live with for the rest of their lives. And so it's finding a way to help them live with it and to manage it within our community. So.
Thank you, Mr. Peschel. I think we need to bring this to a close. Is there anyone who wanted to make a final comment?
I just wanted to put it out there that we have 241 homeless students. And I think that's important for the community to know, because I don't think that people recognize that Oshkosh has a high poverty level. And 241 students, where are they? Where are they staying? They're cruising on couches. Where do you do homework when you don't have a home? These are all important questions that I think we need to answer.
Let's hold that thought for a moment. I'd like to try to bring some closure to the mental health conversation. I think one of our takeaways, and so what do we do moving forward? We've had what I would consider to be a robust conversation in a relatively short amount of time here, and there was the suggestion that Dr. Cartwright and Mr. Roloff get together and see then what are some action steps that.
And to that point, Dr. Herzog, is maybe have that meeting with Human Services.
Yes. Yeah.
And see
Whatever they do
what gaps
appropriate.
they can have, because,
Right.
yes, they're out of Oshkosh, but they also have a NENA office that's just as big as Oshkosh. And they service the north end of Winnebago County. So, but I think that's a good point, is that maybe we get a hold of their child services, protective mental health, and maybe have a meeting of the administrator and just see if there's something we as a city can do, the school district can do to help them and help us at the same time. I think that'd be a great way to move it forward, and then maybe a report back out at a meeting later on.
What we could potentially do is, because we currently meet a lot with the county,
Mhm.
I know Mr. Kemmer does that on a regular basis, is we'd be more than happy to, Mr. Roloff, go ahead and invite, if you'll let me know what staff you would like for us to invite to those conversations.
That'd be
And
great.
just make sure that we start inviting them to those conversations that we
Yep.
currently already have established.
Sure.
If that's okay.
That'd be great.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any final thoughts on mental health? All right, we have a good segue.
Yeah, we say, yeah, you did that
From
stuff. That
Mrs.
was real
Carlin.
smooth.
Jumped on that stuff.
Because there is some overlap there.
Yes.
There is, yes.
Certainly.
So Allison was pointing to my notes because.
Do it.
Do it, do
Tell
it.
'em.
So I was at this conference and they were talking about how they solved their homeless need with the school district, partnered with the city, and built housing for families on a site. It's kind of radical, but it worked. And they wrapped in mental health into this facility. And 91% reduction in poverty and homelessness, and because they were spending $20,000 a person to keep them
On all
on the
the-
streets or
yeah,
something. And so
right.
they, instead of putting that money into other programs, they built homes. So kind of radical, but something to think about. Could we do that? Why not?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So context, I think, is really important on this. A lot of times, people do not understand or recognize what we're talking about when we talk about child poverty. Within the Oshkosh Area School District, we range between 41 to 42% of our students are considered economically disadvantaged. And that the way in which somebody is called economically disadvantaged is because they've typically applied for free and reduced lunch and have qualified for either free or reduced lunch. So we have 41 to 42% of our families who have applied and qualified in order to receive subsidized programs in the areas of either breakfast or lunch. What's important to notate on that is also we know that there is a segment of our population that never has applied. So that's important to note as well. This is just of those who have applied within our student population. The other thing that's also somewhat unique for Oshkosh Area School District is that typically when you're looking at school districts, with the exception of some of your highly urbanized school districts, a majority of school districts, when you look at what percent of those students qualify for free lunch versus what qualifies for reduced lunch, you typically have a smaller proportion on free and a larger proportion on reduced. We have the flip in Oshkosh Area School District. And so that's a very interesting fact that I recently learned about. I'm still diving and delving deeply into that statistic because that is not normal. So I want to make that very clear. What it's actually expressing to me as an initial thought, and it's only an initial thought, so it's not based on data, so I will make that very clear. But the initial thought on that is then that's demonstrating is that we have a huge segment of individuals who have not applied for free and reduced lunch, who would be qualifying for reduced. So I say that to you to say that we're probably much higher than 42% of our students. And it's very interesting because that percentage is much higher than the percent in Winnebago County that are considered to be economically disadvantaged. So I just wanted to give you the framework around that. We do a lot of training related to poverty. And Mr. Kemmer and his team does that a lot. We have some highly devoted school social workers who are going out there trying to find resources for our students. We have a lot of staff members who are putting their own money into the classroom on a daily basis, paraprofessionals and teachers and administrators, in order to try to assist these children as much as possible. We have at each of our high schools, we have areas where children can come in, take showers, wash their clothes, get deodorant. We have food pantries, those type of things, because the need is so great. In addition to, we're very, very fortunate to have many partnerships with community agencies in which to come in order, again, to provide clothing, to provide food for families. But we know we're not hitting every child that needs this. To Ms. Carlin's point, where she was talking about our homeless population, we're talking about children. They don't qualify to stay at the day-by-day warming shelter. They don't qualify to stay for any agency within Oshkosh that provides services to homeless population. So if they are homeless and truly homeless, in other words, they don't have, or let me rephrase, if they're homeless and do not have a parent, I mean, they're just on their own, they're couch surfing, they cannot access any of those agency resources because they're considered a minor. So I think that's important for people to be aware of, because that is a critical element. And that's 200, again, Ms. Carlin was saying about 250 children. Of those 250, I do not know how many of those have parents involved or not. But we know that those 250 children that are thinking on a day-to-day basis, where am I going to put my head down tonight? So as an awareness for you to be aware of, what does this mean for Oshkosh Area School District?
To add to that, one of the concerns I had on the 5 days when we didn't have school this year due to inclement weather was what was going to happen to those children who were depending on the breakfast program in the school or the lunch program in the school, who don't know where their next meal is coming from. I've seen a statements that Julie Dumke had pulled together. She surveyed some high school students at North High School regarding their concerns relative to food security, and they're heartbreaking. Reading about students who will only eat part of their lunch, their free lunch or their reduced lunch, so that they can take it home to share with one or more siblings. And wondering on those days when we don't have school, we have a vacation period coming up. There will be no breakfast program. There will be no lunch program for all those children who depend on that. Or the Friday, I forget what they call those, but the bags that the food pantry provides for hundreds of our students in multiple schools with snacks and so on, so that there's some food in the home. Those of you who may have gone to the Hall of Fame recognition event last week at Oshkosh North High School heard from the recipient of that award how he had been a couch surfer and a garbage surfer, looking for food when he was a student at Oshkosh North High School some roughly 20 years ago. So this is not a new issue, but it's certainly a continuing one and a growing one. And as Dr. Cartwright pointed out, our free and reduced rate is roughly 40 to 42%. That's an average. We might have a school as low as 6%, but we have schools as high as 60 to 70%. Where 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 children in those classrooms are wondering where the next meal is coming from.
And, you know, not to make any kind of excuses, but
No.
we are the largest city in the county by 40,000 people. So that might take the numbers a little bit. We're not the largest school district. I think Neenah actually is a little bigger.
No.
Not population-wise? Okay.
We're the largest in the
Okay. So that being said, our numbers go that way. I think, you know, some of the things we've done at least, and maybe council members will chime in, you know, our Healthy Neighborhood Initiative is trying to improve the quality of the homes in the neighborhoods. I think we've done a much better job in the economic development area to provide jobs in the community. We're partnering, I think, with GoEDC and the Share a Ride program to get people to work that can't get to work because they need a ride. Obviously, the bus is always an issue. You know, we still haven't resolved all those issues, but I think that as a city, I like what you brought up. I think that's a neat thing. I know that Deputy Mayor Palmieri one time talked about building homes for like the parents, you know, that live next door to their kid type thing. But the homelessness, I know they're doing some of that for the veterans in certain areas of the community. But I think, you know, best things that I think as a city, one is, it would be nice to work with the day-by-day to say, if they can get those kids in there overnight, you know, have an area where they could be protected and whatever, if that's the case, or if they go to 365, 7 days a week, which they're looking at doing, hopefully, But I think those that have parents, part of it, I think, is our average income in the Oshkosh area is fairly low. You know, a lot of our manufacturing jobs start at $12, $14 an hour. They're not sustainable for a family of 4 or 5 or 6. That's part of the problem. So getting the wages up a little bit would help too, but we don't have any control over the wage market. But I think trying to bring more businesses into the community, more jobs into the community, jobs that the average person that doesn't maybe have more than a high school education can apply for and make a decent wage will help. But a lot of these kids, you know, that are homeless, are they home, you know, by themselves? I don't know what the answer is for that at all.
Well, I think the biggest challenge, and I think the reason why we have not seen something in our community, because I know our community has a big heart, is any time that you have an establishment in which you're serving the under 18 population, it is mind-numbing the amount of paperwork you have to get through at the state level to even allow that.
Because of,
And that's
the liability.
that because of the liability. And I understand the rules and the red tape are there for a reason, but I know for a fact that that is an incredible barrier to progressing on those types of things. And, you know, we can certainly, you know, look as a city of what we can do, but there's also things we can and cannot do within borrowing with revenue bonds and GO bonds. Also too, you know, if you have an establishment as far as its funding, if you take any grants that may come for state and fed, they don't allow money to come in from, say, religious organizations or things of that nature. So I think it's a great conversation to have, and I think there's a way to figure it out. But I think it's not that the community, I don't think it's the school board, I don't think it's the city not wanting to do something. I think it's how do you overcome some of those hurdles when we're looking at that population that's not 18 and over.
I would imagine the police department, when they have calls, run into situations with families in poverty, children in poverty.
I guess to that point, I was just thinking about how to make the comment in regard to the windows that all of our employees see. You know, I think we're talking about all these situations, whether it be poverty or mental health, and certainly those situations impact us and the services that we can provide. And, you know, the police officers have a window into this world that we're describing. Our firefighters and paramedics have a window into this world. Our inspectors have a window into this world. So they all see these problems from their own unique perspective. And sadly, you know, whether it be the mental health community or whether it be people who are in a impoverished situation, they're preyed upon also. And that's kind of a component that we see that's, you know, not only stressful for the folks that are trying to help effectuate change, but just from a humanity perspective on a regular basis. So, you know, I think some of the solutions really rely on trying to capture ideas from all those windows because they're the ones that interact on a daily basis. And certainly it impacts us, our organization, our ability to provide services when we're dealing with those sorts of circumstances, just like the employees of the school district. You're not just educators in the most classic academic sense. You are educators from a life perspective too. So it's challenging. I think the more we talk and the more we can have our respective employees talk to each other and think about it maybe from a shared perspective, the better off we will be. The more solutions we can bring to the table, the more minds we can place to the problem.
To be
Just wanted to
reflective
add-
of your time. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
To what Councilmember Allison Osby said with the red tape.
We had 50 minutes.
I think we have to get to the folks in Madison to change the system. I think we all know what has to be done, what we'd like to do, but if we're constantly hitting a brick wall because of the red tape, that red tape has to change. I think the kids have to come first. And if there's paperwork involved, that's pretty much a secondary to getting a child fed, a warm place to sleep, and I'm not prone to making trips to Madison, you guys know. But I think that we have to talk to our representatives saying, you've got to help us here. We know what has to be done. You have to simplify the system and put the kids first.
We are
Out of time.
running down
That's why I kept it short.
on the time. I appreciate that. Thank you. The hourglass is almost full on the bottom. Okay, so what are our next steps here? Again, we've just kind of scratched the surface here this evening on a very serious
I think we need
concern in
to,
our community.
I really think this is a conversation that we need to say, all right, in another 3 months, we're gonna come together and we're gonna talk about
Just
these
this.
same things again.
Just
That's
just this
exactly what I was
topic
thinking.
this time, because I think there's a lot to be said, yeah.
I mean, there might be other things we want to talk about in 4 months, but I think these are two important things that, you know, obviously, we knew that we were not going to capture in 50 minutes, that we're going to, you know, have our respective staff members go to the plate, have conversations, and come back and talk about it. You know, just like these issues took years to make, they're also it's going to take years to help repair and to live and grow with whatever we, you know, do with, because I think that's what we should do, so.
So it's,
And we need our legislatures here. They need to hear
Right.
what we're
Well, we
facing.
can
They have
invite
to be
them
part of the
next time.
solution.
Is there anybody else? I was wondering the same thing. I mean, legislators are certainly, do we?
Human Services deals with poverty too. They,
Yeah.
I think, well, there's, United Way should be at the table. They deal tremendously with poverty issues.
I would suggest Julie Dumke also. She
Mhm.
has some eyewitness accounts. so to speak.
Foundation.
Counselors from the hospitals,
Yep.
Okay.
they're dealing with this on a daily basis. They're dealing kind of with the aftermath of all this.
So here's the thing too, is that as we start adding all these people, you know, we're talking, we might need a bigger room, that's very true. But we're talking, you know, at our joint meeting. So this is really greater than our joint meeting that we're.
Could be a separate-
It probably needs to be a
It's usually
separate.
separate.
So,
Well, I think that, again, this might be a topic that we rely on our two
Yep.
officials here, Mr. Roloff and Dr. Cartwright, to figure out when that broader audience would be brought together and when these two bodies would be brought together, and let them take the next step. Because this is not something, as Mr. Peschel has so eloquently expressed, will not be solved overnight.
Nope.
This has been in the making for thousands of years, literally. And so but that doesn't mean that we can't address some of those issues in Oshkosh and make living conditions and quality of life issues better for our citizens, both adults and children.
so
So,
one quick
excuse me,
thing.
Mr. Peschel, we
Oh, I'm
really
sorry.
have to adjourn.
You gotta start your
3
meeting.
minutes.
I know. we can't do it.
Thank you very
We've
much
gone
for
over
the
about
stretch.
7 minutes. So I want to thank the city council and Mr. Roloff and Mr. Fitzpatrick for joining us tonight. And
Other in the 45 minutes, right?
we will look forward to the next meeting. Thank you so much. So we will, I think I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Well, this special meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, guys.